Hello, everyone. It's just me again, talking about one of my, or maybe I should say, two of my favorite subjects, nerds and geeks. Now, a lot of people will group them together, but the truth is, they aren't the same. Nerds generally grow up and become productive in science and technology and other fields, and a lot of them end up being huge successes and become famous for their intelligence and wisdom. A geek, on the other hand, is a little bit different. A geek is basically someone who likes science fiction and science related collector's items or memorabilia. They like comic books, science fiction movies, horror movies, all kinds of oddball stuff, uh, funny inventions, and a geek is likely to dress up for Halloween and go to conventions that celebrate their favorite geek subjects, whether it be comic book or science fiction conventions. Those are geeks. You can be a geek without being incredibly smart. Anyone can be a geek. Now, who is the best nerd or geek? That's being debated, believe it or not, for thousands of years, especially when it comes to the nerd category. Um, Nerds have existed for thousands of years. Take, for instance, Diogenes. Now, talk about a nerd. That fellow who people thought of as a great inspirational mage spent most of his time in a barrel of water. Talk about a nerd. And yet people saw him as a person of great wisdom. But he had his peculiarity. I mean, come on. A barrel of water. He spent his time, most of his life, in a barrel of water. Throw in a rubber ducky and a scrub brush, and you've got Ernie from Sesame Street. He, however, had quite a lot of wisdom and a lot of theology and science and other things can be traced back to his wisdom and his thoughts. And he inspired a lot of people in the paths that they went. Anyway, that is my thought for today. Dialyses. Probably the first great nerd of our time. Now, as for geeks, we have so many of them these days, it's impossible to count. Geeks have their place in society. Geeks create a need for nerds because it is the nerds who create the items that geeks like. So there is a tie-in. It's just that they aren't the same. For instance, a nerd invented our first computer. Granted, it used punch cards and didn't do much, but from there, the idea of computers and how they evolved, the computers evolved rapidly. And they evolved even more rapidly because of nerds. I mean, would technology have evolved in the same path without nerds? Nerds playing software games, video games, created a need for computers that had better graphics. Thus, the nerd and geek together helped to improve the quality and usefulness of certain items that, at least in this day and time, people crave and find as a necessity. Just think about that. We're different, but we coexist. Nerds and geeks. If there weren't computers, you wouldn't have the spread of geekdom. Thus, nerds assisted the geek, because without computers, they wouldn't have had the technology to create video games or to create the now very popular animes and animated shows, which geeks love. Without computer technology, you wouldn't even have half of the science fiction shows that are around, such as Star Wars and Star Trek and other various popular shows, and the new Batman series and a whole bunch of other science fiction and action movies would not have existed were it not for the combined efforts of geeks and nerds. In several ways, they are equal. They are equal but different. Geeks and nerds have made our society what it is. So the next time you come up to a geek or a nerd and think about making fun of them or laughing at them and tweeting about how nerdy they are on your cell phone or over your computer, remember this: if it weren't for the combined efforts of geeks and nerds, you wouldn't have that cell phone or computer to make fun of them on. Anyway, that's my thoughts on geeks and nerds. Until next time, have fun, my fellow geeks and nerds, and anyone else out there who listens to this.